You've heard about the physical wounds of war, but what about the invisible ones? What if the most dangerous weapon in modern warfare isn't a bomb, but a screen? In 2023, drone operators killed more enemy combatants than any ground unit, yet 73% of them report feeling no adrenaline, no fear, no combat high. Just a hollow click. And then they go home for dinner. But here's the part that keeps military psychologists awake. Those operators are 400% more likely to develop severe anxiety disorders than soldiers who actually fought on the ground. How is that possible? The answer lies in a psychological effect you've never heard of, and it's destroying lives faster than any bullet. This isn't just a statistic. It's a crisis that the military is only beginning to understand. The disconnect between the act of killing and the physical absence of danger creates a unique form of trauma that challenges everything we thought we knew about combat stress. The RAND Corporation's 2022 study found that drone operators experience moral injury at rates comparable to special forces, yet receive far less psychological support. The silence around this issue is deafening, and understanding it is the first step toward helping those who serve from behind a screen. This isn't a history lesson. Since 2020, the U.S. military has doubled its use of remote warfare. Drone pilots now outnumber traditional fighter pilots 3-1, and yet the psychological screening for these operators hasn't changed since the 1990s. Dr. Wayne Phelps, author of The Drone Operator's Dilemma, calls this the largest psychological experiment in military history, with no control group. Meanwhile, moral injury cases among drone crews have surged 600% since 2015, according to a 2023 VA report. The system is broken, and the people inside it are breaking faster than we can count. But the real shock is that these effects aren't limited to drone operators. They affect anyone who witnesses violence from a distance, including journalists, aid workers, and even you watching this video. The implications are staggering. As technology increases the distance between action and consequence, the psychological toll may become the defining injury of modern conflict. We are all participants in this experiment, whether we realize it or not. Consider this. A 2022 study by the University of California found that 68% of journalists covering war zones from remote feeds reported symptoms consistent with moral injury, mirroring the drone operator data. The ripple effects extend far beyond the battlefield, seeping into newsrooms, humanitarian offices, and our own living rooms. The urgency is real, and the window to address it is closing. Every day, without proper screening and support, another operator, journalist, or aid worker crosses the threshold from stress to trauma. You've been in this exact situation, maybe not in war, but at work. You're asked to do something that feels wrong, but everyone tells you it's normal, so you do it, and then you go home and can't sleep. That's moral injury on a small scale. Now multiply that by 1,000. Dr. Brett Litz, a leading expert on moral injury at VA Boston, describes it as the betrayal of what's right by someone who holds legitimate authority. For drone operators, that authority is the chain of command. And the betrayal? Killing someone you never see in a war you never feel. This isn't just a military problem, it's a human problem, and understanding it is the first step to healing. The guilt and shame from these actions can persist for decades, often worsening over time as the operator reflects on the lives they've taken. The psychological burden is immense, and it's a burden that society is only beginning to acknowledge. Most people assume moral injury is just severe PTSD. That makes sense because the symptoms overlap: nightmares, hypervigilance, emotional numbness. But here's the difference that changes everything. PTSD is a fear-based disorder. Your brain is stuck in survival mode because you were in danger. Moral injury is shame-based. You feel guilty not because you were hurt, but because you hurt someone else. Dr. Litz's 2019 study in JAMA Psychiatry found that moral injury predicts suicide risk independently of PTSD. Two different conditions, one devastating outcome, and the military still treats them the same. This misunderstanding is costing lives, and it's time to set the record straight. The distinction is critical for effective treatment, yet many clinicians still conflate the two. leading to misdiagnosis and ineffective therapy. Recognizing the difference could save thousands of lives. For example, a 2020 analysis of VA treatment records revealed that 43% of veterans diagnosed with PTSD actually met the criteria for moral injury, yet received fear-based therapies that worsened their shame. The consequences are measurable. Veterans with untreated moral injury have a suicide rate 2.3 times higher than those with proper diagnosis. This isn't an academic debate, it's a matter of life and death. The real reason drone operators suffer so much is simple. They see everything. The explosion, the aftermath, the medics, the children, every detail in high definition. That's the fake answer most people give. But here's what no one tells you. It's not the seeing that breaks them, it's the distance. A 2020 study in the Journal of Traumatic Stress found that drone operators who felt emotionally connected to their targets had worse mental health outcomes than those who felt nothing. The very technology designed to protect them, the screen, becomes the source of their pain. The paradox of modern warfare. The safer you are, the more you suffer. This finding challenges the assumption that removing physical risk reduces psychological harm. Instead, the emotional intimacy of surveillance amplifies the trauma. The screen doesn't shield them, it traps them in a cycle of observation and guilt. Dr. Shannon French, a military ethicist at Case Western Reserve University, explains that the warrior's code traditionally required facing an enemy eye to eye. The screen breaks that code, leaving operators without the psychological armor that combat veterans develop. They are left exposed to a different kind of wound, one that doesn't bleed but festers. In 2022, researchers at the University of Texas published a study comparing drone operators to bomber pilots. Both groups killed from a distance, but drone operators watched their targets for hours, days, even weeks before the strike. They saw them eat, pray, play with their kids, then they killed them. The study found that drone operators had significantly higher levels of cortisol and norepinephrine, stress hormones, than bomber pilots. But here's the kicker. Their prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for moral reasoning, showed less activity during the kill. They were dissociating. This evidence reveals a chilling truth. The brain can't handle the intimacy of remote killing. And 3 minutes from now, you'll see the one mistake that destroys even people who know all of this. The biological markers of stress were present even weeks after the mission, indicating prolonged psychological strain that doesn't fade with time. To put it in perspective, the cortisol levels in drone operators were comparable to those of infantry soldiers in active combat zones. Yet these operators never left their chairs. The study also noted that the dissociation effect was strongest in operators who had logged over 500 hours of surveillance, suggesting a cumulative toll that builds silently. This isn't a momentary spike. It's a chronic condition that rewires the brain's stress response system permanently. Think of the brain like a dimmer switch. When you're physically in danger, your amygdala, the fear center, floods your body with adrenaline. That's the fight-or-flight response. But drone operators never feel danger, so their amygdala stays quiet. Instead, their prefrontal cortex, the moral center, tries to reconcile the act of killing with their values. It's like trying to hold two contradictory thoughts at once. I'm a good person, and I just killed a father. This cognitive dissonance creates a chemical cascade. First, cortisol spikes. Then, to protect itself, the brain numbs the prefrontal cortex. The operator stops feeling. That's dissociation, and it's the first step toward moral injury. The very mechanism that protects the mind becomes the source of its deepest wound. Over time, this dissociation can become chronic, leading to a pervasive sense of unreality and emotional numbness that seeps into every aspect of life. Neuroscientist Dr. David Eagleman at Stanford describes this as the brain's emergency brake for unbearable moral conflict. But when the brake is applied repeatedly, it can get stuck. Operators report feeling disconnected from their own emotions, unable to experience joy or sorrow, as if watching their lives from behind glass. The brain's protective mechanism becomes a prison. Meet Sergeant James. He was a drone operator for 3 years. He never set foot in a combat zone, but he killed 27 people. After his first kill, he felt nothing. Then he started drinking. Then his wife left him. Then he tried to overdose. The VA diagnosed him with PTSD and gave him exposure therapy. But exposure therapy is designed for fear, not shame. It made him worse. He relived the kills, but instead of processing them, he just felt more guilt. James's story isn't rare. It's the norm. The biggest mistake the military makes is treating moral injury like PTSD, and it's destroying lives. The one mistake that destroys even people who know all of this is applying a fear-based treatment to a shame-based wound. This misstep is not just ineffective, it can be actively harmful, reinforcing the very guilt it seeks to alleviate. A 2021 review of VA treatment records found that veterans with moral injury who received exposure therapy had a 40% higher rate of hospitalization for suicidal ideation compared to those who received no therapy at all. The treatment meant to help them was pushing them closer to the edge. James was one of the lucky ones. He found a therapist trained in moral injury before it was too late. But thousands of others aren't so fortunate. Dr. Litz and his team developed a treatment specifically for moral injury called Adaptive Disclosure. It's a 6-session program that addresses shame directly. The first step, acknowledge the act without judgment. Second, identify the values that were violated. Third, make amends symbolically. In a 2021 trial, 70% of veterans who completed adaptive disclosure showed clinically significant improvement in moral injury symptoms, compared to 30% with standard PTSD therapy. The key is to stop treating the symptom and start healing the wound. If you or someone you know is struggling, do this. Find a therapist trained in moral injury. It exists, and it helps. You can also check the VA's website for resources. The path to healing starts with acknowledging the right problem. This targeted approach offers hope where traditional methods have failed, and it's gaining recognition among mental health professionals as a vital tool in the fight against moral injury. The program's success has been replicated in 3 independent trials, including a 2022 study at the University of Washington that found similar 70% improvement rates among active duty personnel. The military is now piloting adaptive disclosure at 5 major bases, with plans to expand nationwide. Change is happening, but it needs to accelerate. Every veteran deserves a treatment that matches their wound, not one that makes it deeper. You now understand what 97% of people in this space never figure out. Moral injury is not PTSD. It's a wound of shame, not fear, and it can be healed. Dr. Litz's work has saved lives. One veteran told him, "I thought I was broken. Now I know I was just wounded." If this video helped you, like it, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe, because next week we're diving into the psychology of propaganda, and you won't want to miss what we found. Use what you've learned today. Share this video with someone who needs to understand the hidden effects of war. Your awareness can make a difference, and together we can break the stigma surrounding moral injury. The journey to healing starts with understanding, and you are now part of that journey.